Your one click on the subscribe button makes a huge difference. Thank you for your kind support.
Armed, 2025, is a complex and riveting film that delves into themes of loyalty, desperation, and the unintended consequences of betrayal and ambition. At its core, the movie tells the story of a group of veteran Marines who decide to take one last rebellious stand against the forces they believe have abandoned them. Driven by desperation and the sense of having been discarded by the country they served, the group orchestrates the theft of military-grade weaponry, expecting a payday that will allow them to pull off a clean break and escape their dreary existence. However, their plans spiral out of control when they unwittingly awaken a Cold War-era robotic weapon designed for ruthless efficiency, a machine incapable of feelings, compromise, or failure. As the machine methodically pursues its targets, the group of Marines are faced not only with its terrifying presence but also with their own moral compromises and fractured loyalties. The film begins with an air of suspense, immediately pulling the viewer into the tense world of these jaded military men. From the whispered schemes about midnight operations to the intricate planning of their heist, the movie effectively sets up the stakes. These Marines, once heroes in their own right, now view themselves as outcasts, disillusioned by a system they see as having used them up and spat them out. They're united by a shared sense of betrayal but divided by their methods and principles. Frank, a hardened leader, emerges as the brains behind the operation. It's clear that he's meticulous in his planning, fully aware of the risks, and willing to take on the consequences of his actions. Alongside him, the equally disillusioned characters, notably Miller, Stan, Chuck, and others, vary in their motivations, but all carry personal burdens tied to their service. The opening scenes emphasize a stark sense of realism. The gripes the characters share resonate deeply, drawing on real-world struggles faced by many veterans who wrestle with inadequacies in the support systems they return to after service. Narratively, this provides a strong emotional anchor for the viewer to comprehend why these men are opting for such extreme measures. As the group plans the robbery, a task more difficult than anyone initially imagined, it becomes evident that their camaraderie is frayed, held together more by their common enemy than by trust in one another. Their dialogue is raw, invasive, and steeped in unspoken regrets and suppressed anger. Still, they seem determined to push forward, convinced that the ends will justify the means. The heist itself unfolds with a stark mixture of tension and foreboding. The crew infiltrates the warehouse where the firearms shipment is stored, encountering a solitary security guard. The moment swiftly devolves into chaos as they kill the guard, underscoring the escalating moral compromises they're forced to make. This act of violence feels inevitable and tragic, yet it establishes a grim aspect of the narrative. These men are now fugitives, not only hunted by the military but also courting decisions they may never be able to reconcile. Importantly, the heist appears to go mostly according to plan. The group secures the weapons and loads them into their van, sticking precisely to the timeline Frank had meticulously mapped out. But amid their efforts, subtle, ominous cues suggest that their real trouble is just beginning. As the group gathers at the abandoned construction site, a staging ground where they plan to sell the stolen military-grade weapons to a black market dealer, the tension ratchets up further. This is where the grounded action thriller begins to morph into something entirely different. Amid discussions about dividing the money and their plans for escape, strange events interrupt their flow. A mechanical whirring sound comes from one of the crates they stole. Initially thinking it might simply be another weapon, the men open it to investigate, inadvertently awakening a dormant Cold War-era robot. This machine, designed purely with killing efficiency in mind, activates and begins scanning the proximity for threats. From the moment its electronic interface flickers to life, the group is plunged into an unrelenting fight for survival. The machine itself is an ingeniously terrifying villain. It has no emotions, no conscience, and no dialogue, a stark contrast to the Marines' messy, deeply human infighting. Over the course of the film, the robot becomes less of a character and more of a symbol. It embodies the unbending coldness of bureaucratic systems, designed to complete a mission at all costs and blind to the nuances of morality or compassion. The juxtaposition between the robot as an unfeeling killing machine and the emotionally charged conflict among the Marines amplifies one of the film's central themes. What does it truly mean to be human, and how is our humanity tested during desperate times? As the robot attacks, the group's cohesion disintegrates. Stan, who earlier displayed doubts about the mission, is among the first to panic, betraying the others in a futile attempt to escape. Chuck, who prides himself on his toughness, realizes too late that even his stockpile of weapons is no match for this technological monstrosity. The robot is unaffected by bullets, efficiently eliminating its targets one by one. These encounters are staged with relentless tension, each death carrying a weight rooted in the characters' begrudging camaraderie and their shared sense of betrayal. For all their ruggedness, these men quickly begin to feel helpless when faced with a relentless enemy they cannot fully grasp. The narrative cranks up the psychological tension as much as it does the physical danger. Trapped and outgunned, the characters are forced to confront the choices that led them to this point. Flashbacks and intimately raw conversations reveal their inner lives, particularly Frank's. His sense of betrayal is tied deeply to his post-war struggles, the loss of friends like Chappie, and his frustration at the systemic neglect of veterans. Yet, his leadership keeps fraying as the group demands answers about the enigmatic machine hunting them. Frank's confidence crumbles as he admits, finally, that he has no idea what the robot is or how to stop it. This admission serves as a turning point. These men, who once operated like precision tools themselves during wartime, find themselves scrambling with no plan or direction. Symbolism abounds in the group's interactions with the robot. On one level, it's a literal manifestation of their worst fears coming to life. The faceless, unfeeling force of the war machine they served but never fully understood. On another level, it represents the unintended consequences of their actions. By betraying their own principles to steal from the military and deal with arms dealers, they awaken something that could not be controlled. Thematically, the robot's inability to distinguish between enemy combatants and its own creators resonates as bitter irony, mirroring the Marines' own disillusionment with a military system that trained them to kill but left them ill-prepared for civilian life. The second half of the film is consumed by the dwindling number of survivors trying to outwit an enemy immune to conventional tactics. Miller attempts to set a trap for the robot using explosives, but it backfires disastrously, taking out one of their few remaining strongholds. Stan eventually succumbs not to the robot but to his own paranoia, accidentally injuring one of his comrades in the chaos. Tensions come to a head between Frank and Chuck, who accuses Frank of leading them all into certain death. Chuck's anger stems not just from fear, but also from the gnawing feeling that their trust in Frank's leadership has been misplaced from the start. The film's climax is a desperate standoff between Frank and the robot. Frank, the last man standing, lures the machine into a trap of his own design. Utilizing his wits and years of training, he manages to immobilize the robot temporarily, but the victory is fleeting. In its final moments, the robot reactivates and launches a counterattack. Frank realizes that he cannot destroy the machine, nor can he run from it. In a symbolic gesture of both defeat and defiance, he detonates the explosives around him, choosing to destroy himself along with the robot rather than let it complete its mission. The ending is as bleak as it is thought-provoking. The film doesn't shy away from the grim reality of its premise. Actions have consequences, often far beyond what we can anticipate or control. By the time the dust settles, the robbery seems almost insignificant compared to the larger forces at play. The robot, a remnant of a bygone era, serves as a reminder of the cost of war, not just in terms of human lives but also in the moral compromises that echo long after the fighting ends. Emotionally, the ending leaves the viewer grappling with difficult questions. Can a person truly escape the past, or does it follow them regardless of their intentions? The Marines believed they could steal, sell, and walk away from their crimes. But the appearance of the robot, a product of the very system they sought to exploit, shattered those plans. In many ways, the machine is a metaphor for the war they left behind but never truly escaped. Each character carried their own scars, and those scars ultimately manifested in their downfall. Comparatively, Armed draws parallels to other action thrillers like Predator, 1987, and The Terminator, 1984, where man faces off against an unstoppable enemy. However, its heavy focus on the psychological and moral ramifications of its characters' actions sets it apart. While the action is intense, it never overshadows the introspective aspects of the narrative, which delve into themes of betrayal, redemption, and the enduring cost of service. The film is less about the spectacle of the robot and more about the humanity, and lack thereof, revealed in the characters' responses to it. The final takeaway from Armed is as chilling as it is poignant. The Marines set out to reclaim a sense of agency in their lives, only to be destroyed by a force that couldn't care less about intentions or morality. It's a powerfully nihilistic conclusion that forces viewers to reflect on the fragility of systems we often take for granted and the painful irony that our greatest creations, whether machines or ideologies, can sometimes be our undoing. In the end, Armed leaves a lasting impression as a cautionary tale about the hubris of assuming we can control what we set in motion.